Welcome back to another edition of the Blue Review. That intro gets me every time, guys. I just wanted to say welcome to the show. Of course, our friend Bruce Kuntz, who we've had on several times this year to talk all about prospects and just about the Dodgers in general. So we have a huge episode today because there is a lot to react to. Who got sent out? Who got brought in? Did anybody, were there some steals on Andrew Friedman's end? We'll get into this. Bruce, how are we doing today? I just want to ask you. It's been a while since we've seen you.
Hey, doing great. I'm happy to be back. Thank you guys for having me again. Like you said, there's a lot to talk about. The game last night, the deadline just finished up, so there's plenty of content to cover today.
That's right. Okay, so before we get into anything and before I toss it to Greg, I just want to remind everyone that here at the Blue Review, we are presented by LAX and our friends at Los Angeles International Airport. I want to apologize. I don't have their hat on today. I'm rocking Iowa for some reason. But our friends at Los Angeles International Airport are saving guest time, reducing traffic, and just creating an overall better experience. So if you want to learn more, you can check it out at flylax.com/transforminglax. All right. I was trying to keep it positive with that intro, but let's just get right into it, guys. Greg, last night sucked.
Yeah, that is the right way to put it. Last night did suck. I was in such a good mood, Marcus and Bruce. I was sitting there. I was like, hey, I feel great about Jack Flaherty. I feel great about the Dodgers are winning right now. Okay, it's getting close. And then all of a sudden, Blake Trinan decides to give up not one, but two home runs in the bottom of the ninth. And that was a complete and utter disaster that made me angry all over again. So what is both of you? We'll start with you, Marcus, but sorry, Bruce, we're going to start with you, Marcus. What did you what is the reason that this bullpen is so messed up right now?
I mean, other than guys just missing location, I can't really pinpoint what it is. I think the worst part to me is, not only is the bullpen failing right now, but it's the guys that are failing. It's the guys that you are counting on in big spots. It would have been one thing, it was one thing when it was Johan Ramirez, right? It would have been something else if it was Anthony Bonda, these guys that were sort of reclamation projects that you were just hoping to get something out of. The biggest problems lately have been Evan Phillips, Blake Trinan, Alex Vesia. These are the guys that were supposed to be the cornerstone of the bullpen that were supposed to help, Phillips was supposed to be the ninth inning guy. The other guys were supposed to be the bridge to get you to the ninth inning. And no matter who Roberts has put in, no matter what the situation they've been put in, it's been a mess. I think I don't know if you saw the Bill Plunkett tweet that they have not had a scoreless outing from the bullpen since July 12th, right? It's been over 2 weeks since that's happened. And so it's a thing where at this point, I don't even know what Dave Roberts can do because he's trying to, pull levers and push buttons. But at some point, the guys that are out there have to get it done, and they're just not getting it done.
Yeah, this is the third time they've blown a five-run lead in the last 13 games and second in the last 3 games, Bruce. What is it that you're seeing from this bullpen and why it's so taxed?
Yeah, it's been ugly lately, that's for sure. I think that the situations going on with the starting pitching have had a big effect. Not only there's been guys going down with injury, but there's been rookies getting called up. There's been inconsistent starts from the guys who have been healthy. And I think that's really bled over into the bullpen. Over this last month, the Dodger bullpen has been used more than any other bullpen in baseball because of the starting pitching situation. And I think that we're seeing that taxing come through. Guys like Alex Vesia, his fastball velocity has been steadily going down, and that's definitely a concern in terms of overuse and all of that. Blake Trinan as well has not been performing lately. Evan Phillips hasn't either. And I think there's some other things going on with those guys other than just the overuse. But I think the overuse kind of compounds any issues that they're having and makes it even worse, especially when you're talking about guys like Trinan and Daniel Hudson that are a little bit older. You really need to be careful with those kind of arms and make sure that they stay healthy. And over this last month, it has not been pretty.
Yeah, it just really seems like it's been a situation where the starters have not been good enough, have not gone long enough. So you're getting to your bullpen earlier. And also, look what's going to happen today. It's Clayton Kershaw on the mound today, which great. He was good. He was decent to good in his first start back, but he's not a guy that's going to go 6-7 innings. It didn't even matter yesterday. Tyler Glasnow went 7 innings. He gave you a quality start. He only gave up 3 runs, which was kind of frustrating that he gave up the 3 runs, but he still he had a quality start. And that was the first one I've seen in quite some time. And now you're going to have another guy today that's going to go 3-4 innings, maybe possibly if he's really, really good, goes 5. So that bullpen is going to get hit once again. And this is just what's kind of going on with this team right now. It's very, very frustrating but there is some little glimmer of hope for me, Marcus, where it's like Brusdar Graterol is in AAA. He's pitching. Ryan Brazier is pitching in AAA. You did get Michael Kopech, and hopefully they can fix him a little bit. I know he walks a lot of guys, but he throws gas. So maybe this is a situation where you can start having a couple new arms in the bullpen to kind of even it out a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so I know you said before the show that after the game last night, you had to watch The Amazing Race to sort of decompress.
I did. I need to relax.
I don't know if it was decompressing or sort of trying to make myself feel better, but I started going through and like looking up injury reports for guys, right? Like, where is Graterol right now? What is Yamamoto up to? What is Mookie Betts up to? Just trying to get like a sense of like, okay, like stop, breathe, help is on the way. Yeah, look, the lead is down to 5.5 right now, which isn't great, but it's still 5.5 games, right? Like, let's not let panic, let's not let frustration turn into panic. So I think we all sort of cope in our own way. That and a glass of bourbon sort of helped me get through the evening last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about you, Bruce. Do you believe in the adage of like that first place teams need to have that sense of just of getting pushed from behind by getting pushed by the Padres? That's going to help them actually do better in the postseason, and they're not just running away with the division. Is that something you believe in?
I don't think so necessarily. I think this Dodger team has enough experience at the top, and Roberts and the veterans that are with the team that there are guys that have been through this before a bunch of times with the Dodgers of having bigger division leads, and I think that they do a good job of taking every single day seriously and making sure they win every game they can win. Otherwise, they wouldn't put up 100-win seasons year after year, regardless of what everybody else in the division is doing. I do think that it is a little bit of a concern. The Padres are not that far back right now as we enter August. 2 months to play and 5.5 games is definitely within reach. So I think that this team needs to definitely try and dial it in here. Hope everybody gets healthy. I think you look at guys like Muncy, Yamamoto, and I think those are a couple of cases where you're kind of just hoping they get back in the first place. And then other guys like Betts, Rojas, Taylor, that you just need to get healthy, get back on the mound, or get back into the games. And I think that's a understanding that they'll be back, and you just hope that it can happen sooner rather than later.
Yep. And let's kind of move away from last night now. I think it's time to move on to the biggest story of all this and why you are here. Marcus, we can go back and forth as well. Parker, join in whenever you want to. But really, the Jack Flaherty move is kind of a move that really was much needed for this team. They needed a frontline starter, especially with not knowing what's going on with Yamamoto. Who they gave up? They gave up Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney. Are those two guys I believe it's the 8th and 22nd prospect that the Dodgers have in their farm system. Seems like a steal to me. What do you think of that move, Bruce?
Yeah, I like the move for sure. I think that it's tough to look at it at face value. We had the article yesterday that came out from Ken Rosenthal that said that the Yankees were in negotiations for Flaherty and wound up backing out because of some medical concerns. I do think that is important to keep an eye on and, make a mental note of, but I don't think that it necessarily means that that's going to be a problem for Flaherty. Rosenthal mentioned in the article, and it's absolutely true that every team has their own medical staff that can have their own concerns. The Yankees could have seen something they didn't like, whereas the Dodgers are totally clear with him and think that he's going to be good and healthy down the stretch. I do think that when you take away that injury talk and everything, just looking at the trade itself, Flaherty for Theron Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney, I think is as good of a move as they could have made. The best starting pitcher that got traded yesterday, and they did not have to give up a stereotypical haul to get him. There were multiple trades made yesterday that had bigger prospect returns going back to whatever teams made those trades. And I think that for the Dodgers to get the best starting pitcher on the market and really not take all that big of a hit to the farm system is really impressive work by Andrew Friedman and all the guys up top.
So then you had earlier the trade with the White Sox and the Cardinals, the three-way deal. Miguel Vargas is in that deal, which I was saying yesterday, a little bit of a surprise when you kind of step back and realize what situation he was in. It sort of made sense. But what about Alexander Albertus, Jarrell Perez? I know Albertus isn't going to play for the rest of the year, but what do those guys bring? What's potentially leaving the organization with those two?
Yeah, those guys are both talented for sure. 19-year-old infielders that Albertus has the ability to play all across the infield, second base, shortstop, third base, and he has a really good glove. He does a lot of things the right way, Albertus, and he's been a guy that I've enjoyed following and keeping up with on his way through rookie ball. He only just got called up to Single A a few weeks ago, so he hasn't been there very long. And then he is more of a contact kind of bat, not a ton of power, but he's just a well-rounded guy that it's easy to imagine developing into a utility kind of all-around infielder that does a lot of things well. And then for Jarrell Perez, he's more of a second base only kind of guy defensively. He'll do a good enough job there to not be a liability defensively. But then his bat is really where a lot of the value comes. He has a lot of power for a 6 foot, 179 pound kind of guy in the right-handed batter's box. He has hit for power in Single A this year and will probably add strength as he gets a little bit older. So I think both those guys are prospects that have upside for sure, and they've both kind of risen up boards this year. But I also don't think that they're top of the system kind of talent. Neither of them have played above Single A, and at some point you have to give up decent players to get back decent players. And I don't think that those two are guys that are necessarily impossible to give up. Along with Miguel Vargas, I think that he didn't really have a totally clear future in the organization. The defensive home was very shaky, and I think it wound up kind of being a similar situation to Michael Busch, where it was just hard to envision where he was going to play, and so he becomes expendable. So the Dodgers found a way to make an upgrade, and he winds up getting shipped off.
So I want to go back to the Trey Sweeney and Lorenzo move. So Lorenzo was a catcher, first baseman, right? So he was mostly a catcher. From what I was understanding, he's one of the top catching prospects for the Dodgers did have. But he's kind of blocked by Dalton Rushing and Diego Cartaya. Was that one of the reason that they went with Lorenzo being moved and not a Dalton Rushing or Diego Cartaya? And also for Trey Sweeney, he seems like he's just about ready to come up, and the Dodgers are kind of looking for a shortstop. Were those two guys both guys that the Dodgers were able to move because of depth, or what do you think?
Yeah, I would imagine that going into the process, the Tigers probably had certain feelings on those two players and let the Dodgers know that they had some interest there. Lorenzo has big raw power, and so he's climbed up prospect boards over this last year and a half or so, led the California League in homers last year with 24. And as he continues to develop as a hitter, they'll hope that as much of that raw power can show through in games as possible. He hasn't done as well in high A this year as he did in Single A. Last year, he's batting .220, only 7 homers so far this year. But that's the kind of thing where it's easy to imagine once he makes some tweaks and eliminates some of the in-zone whiff that he has right now, he could become a really big power hitter. I think that his defensive future is a little bit more murky. He's already split time catcher, first base, and I think even if he does stick behind the plate on some level as he makes it to the major leagues, it won't be as a great defensive catcher. So I think when the Dodgers have the kind of catching depth that they already have in the organization, Dalton Rushing is arguably the top prospect in the system, and he's made strides defensively to stick at catcher. I think that makes Lorenzo become a little bit more expendable. And then for Trey Sweeney, this is his first year in the organization, got him in the offseason from the Yankees, former first-round pick, but getting to AAA, he hasn't done a ton in Oklahoma City. He's more of a fringy kind of defender at shortstop, hasn't hit a ton down in AAA, and I think that at that point, he was kind of sliding a little bit. I know he was sliding down my board a little bit. It was number 18 in the system preseason, and I had him more in the 23 to 25 range here in the middle of the year. So I think at that point, in that range of the system, for a guy that doesn't necessarily project to have a super high ceiling, you can afford to lose a guy who's probably going to be more of a utility infielder once he gets to the big leagues.
Or we talk about Dalton Rushing. I mean, there's a lot of names. You wrote about it in Dodgers Digest. I mean, guys like Rushing, DePaula, River Ryan, Justin Robleski. They held on to them during, and I know we talked a lot about whether or not they were going to get moved. Do you have any sense of how seriously these names were involved in any trade talks, and how big of a win was it for the organization to not have to part with any of those guys?
Oh, it's huge. I think that obviously getting Jack Flaherty in the first place is the big win of the trade. But the secondary one to be totally thrilled with is that they held on to all those top guys. When that trade broke and the return wasn't public yet, at least to me, I was bracing for a painful return that might have included Rushing, might have included guys that have just reached the major leagues like Robleski or River Ryan. And so for all those guys to stay put, I think that it signals to me that the Dodgers entered this deadline with a plan of saying we're going to make the upgrades that we can, but these guys that they're really enamored with in the minor leagues, they don't want to part with them. And especially the guys that just reached the major leagues, and River Ryan, Robleski, Landon Knack has been in the majors a lot this year. I think those guys are important to hang on to for depth. And the fact that none of them got moved, whereas someone like Miguel Vargas did, I think that definitely shows how the organization feels about some of those pitchers that just reached the majors this year.
So with Robleski and Ryan, they're most likely don't factor into the starting rotation when it comes to the postseason. Do you see either one of them being a good option to be a long reliever, or somebody that just comes in after, if Kershaw pitches, comes in after the third inning and takes over from there? And how really hard is it to make that move for some of these younger pitchers that are used to being starters?
Yeah, it's not a totally easy thing. I think River Ryan is the guy that's easiest to imagine in that kind of role. He closed some games in college at UNC Pembroke, so he has a little bit of experience coming out of the bullpen in his life. Of course, that's been a little bit of time since he was in college, but he's got the stuff that he can pitch kind of anywhere, anytime, and that should play. So he's definitely a guy that I look at as this season goes on, and as hopefully some of the other starting pitching arms get healthy, he might be able to shift over into the bullpen and maybe, who knows, even get a little bit of an extra tick on that stuff in shorter stints. And he could be a weapon for sure out of the bullpen. Robleski, I think, could make it work too. He's got the stuff. I think he would be better suited for more of that kind of longer relief role, like you said, than Ryan could probably work in any kind of a situation.
Let's go back a little bit too, because we're talking guys who kind of come and gone. Also, a group of guys just came through the draft. I know we talked to you right afterwards, but how is the process of signing guys going? It seems like they've done a pretty good job of signing a lot of these guys they were able to select in the draft.
Yeah, the Dodgers did a good job this year. They wound up getting 15 of their guys in the draft, 18 draft picks. They signed 15 of them. 3 guys are going unsigned, heading back to college. So I think that is when you enter the draft, that's an understanding. Eric Parker, the 15th round pick, is probably the biggest talent that is going back to college instead of signing, but he was only taken in the 15th round because there were huge signability concerns. And my gut feeling is they took him in that spot as kind of an insurance plan for if one of the top draft picks didn't sign, then they could redistribute some of that money to him and hope they could sway him away from that Georgia commitment. But all the guys at the top signed, so the money dried up pretty fast. But I think they did a good job with this class for sure. 15 out of the 18 guys. I was happy with the class for sure. Heavy on the college arms, and then some prep bat talent at the top. I think it's going to be a fun class to watch develop through the minor leagues because there's a lot of upside, especially with those top 2 prep bats in Kellen Lindsey and Chase Harlan.
So with all those guys that they signed, you said signed all the top guys there. Where do you think this minor league system is ranked now? Because they were going in, they always seemed like they were a top 10 minor league system, and now they're adding guys, and they really only lost the 2 in Lorenzo and Sweeney from the trade deadline. Are they going to be moving up in the rankings? Where are they at right now?
I would imagine they stay in a similar place to where they were before the deadline, just because they didn't lose a ton of talent. There are other organizations that lost a lot more in terms of prospect capital than the Dodgers did. And so as some of those teams kind of slide down the boards a little bit, the Dodgers will probably stay in the same area. I do agree with you that I think the Dodgers have been a top 10 farm system. You can go back years, and I don't think there's been a single time that the Dodgers aren't in the top 10. Even this year when arguably there hasn't been quite as much top-heavy talent. I think the depth of this organization, there's so much quality, so many quality players all the way down through AAA to rookie ball, guys and relief pitchers that could turn into big leaguers, and depth in the lineups of all those minor league teams. So I think this organization thrives in that depth, and that is definitely enough to hold them up in the top 10. And when they didn't lose the guys like Rushing, DePaula, Ryan and Robleski still qualify as prospects, at least for now. I definitely think that they don't really have any business sliding down boards, at least not all that much.
Any sense, and this is just, big picture philosophy of this year was very much a seller's market at the trade deadline, and we saw a lot of teams kind of hand over a lot of prospects just to get some pieces. Is this going to be the new norm? And if you are a team like the Dodgers that is prospect rich, how do you kind of survive in this new world?
Yeah, I think that this is the trade deadline that is here to stay. And I think that it's because of the expanded postseason format. There are not as many sellers as there used to be, just because so many teams have a chance to sneak into the wild card that teams are very hesitant to just go all the way in and sell. The Tampa Bay Rays were one of the only teams that were really on the brink that just decided to push in their chips and get rid of all their expiring talent and a lot of guys that weren't even expiring contracts. And I think that more speaks to the Rays as a unique and fantastic organization to really not teeter on that edge, because I think that middle ground is where you don't want to be as a team. The Giants are a team that I kind of identified as being right on that spot. They traded away Jorge Soler, but then they also brought in some talent. They didn't trade Blake Snell. And that whole thing is just a little bit confusing as to whether they're.
I didn't get that.
So I think that's where you don't want to be. But I think there's enough teams that are in that exact spot that it's going to be hard to forecast the trade deadline moving years into the future. As long as this expanded postseason format is a thing, they're not going to have the same kind of fire sales as you used to have with 10 different teams in the league being fully willing to just sell off all their pieces. That's just not a thing anymore. And when there are not that many guys on the market, the prices naturally just drive way up. So I think the Dodgers, being as smart as they are, they don't ever overpay. I would imagine that they might be even more aggressive in the off seasons, going after talent that they want, guys like Crochet and Robert that I'm sure they're going to revisit in the off season, maybe even Skubal. But when you know that the deadline is going to be such a crapshoot with guys that teams that may not sell if they think they're in the race still, the off season is going to be a time when there's no deadline to work against. Everybody's kind of relaxed with where they are, and it might be a little bit more of a free moving market.
Yeah, it's also been just a little bit weird with how the trade deadline worked as well. The Orioles and the Phillies made 2 trades with each other, and they were the top teams in each league. And also the Cubs decided to make moves to help with their future, and they were a bottom-dwelling team. So I'm sure we'll start seeing more of that kind of stuff as well. Do you have any final thoughts, Bruce, because we got to get out of here, but do you have any final thoughts? And also tell us where we can find all of your stuff.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm really happy with how the Dodgers did at this deadline. I think it's a tough pill to swallow for that. Another bullpen collapse happened last night right after the deadline, and that you can't get any more relief help. But ultimately, with the prices that were going, I'm glad the Dodgers didn't way overpay for another closer, because I think this unit still has the talent to be as good as they were for the first part of this season. And I think they'll return there eventually once they get healthy and get rested is the big one. And then for me, follow me on Twitter, bnicholas7. You can subscribe to my Substack, bnicholas.substack.com. There I post all my articles that I write across different sites. I'll be posting this segment there as well. So appreciate you guys for having me on again. It's always a blast to come on this show here and talk Dodgers.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bruce. This was a great reaction to what went down yesterday and what to look forward to as we are moving into this second half of the season deeper in. So thank you again, Bruce. We'll be back tomorrow, 9:30 to 9:55 as always. And of course, today on the bump, Clayton Kershaw versus the Padres.
Kershaw Day.
It's Kershaw Day. So maybe some positive vibes as we head into Kershaw Day.
More bullpen.
Yes. Woo! All right. This has been the Blue Review. Thank you to LAX. Thank you again to Bruce Kuntz for joining. We'll be back again every weekday, 9:30 to 9:55.